Let's move on to the Chicago Bulls. The over-under is 43.5 in the market. There is an under 44.5 in the market. You can get 43.5 under if you want to get really aggressive at plus 130 at PointsBet. So PointsBet's giving you the lower range of the number, but you're getting a plus number on the return on it as opposed to the minus 110. Brandon, let's start very much at the top with what is your projection for the Chicago Bulls this season?
All right, my Chicago Bulls. This never goes well for me. So here's where I got them. I have the Bulls exactly league average offensively at 15th. I have them 20th on defense. I put them at 36 to 44 wins. Now I do my team comparison thing. If my offense and defense projections are right, and I know you're going to argue against it, but if they are, here are other teams that fit into that range. And I have to mention these because it was very worrying when I looked at them. We got the Pelicans last year and 2 years before that. We got the Spurs last year. Remember the team that played like a 500 team but won like 34 games? We had the Kings last year. We had the Wizards from 2 years ago. Like basically teams that are league average on offense and slightly worse on defense are 30 to 35 win teams. Like they are fringe play-in teams that might end on the wrong side of the fringe. So I think the trajectory here is you're running it back and you're hoping you're healthier and that it's good enough. I don't think they're going to be good enough, and I'm not sure I believe they're going to be healthier.
Your analysis is sound, I'll tell you first off. Can we admit that you are, by nature, hyper pessimistic about Chicago?
I mean, I think that that's fair. I just don't think that that's baking into my numbers here. I do pretty well. Like I'm pessimistic about all of my teams, but I think I'm do pretty well when I'm an analyst to separate that.
All right, well, let's look at this.
Okay.
13th on offense and 24th on defense last year per dunksandthrees.com adjusted for schedule. Okay. You've got them 15th and 25th. Is that right?
15th and 20th.
15th and 20th. So you actually have them getting a little bit better defensively, which is I'm proud of you. Although I'm sure after I told you that, you're probably going to move them down now.
No, I do.
So I can't argue with the assessment. Real quick, do you have a best bet on the under here?
I do. I am betting the under. I want to talk. We'll get to it about which number I should play, but it is a best bet on the under.
Okay. So to me, this is what it comes down to. Lonzo's injury is the biggest factor here.
Yep.
Is that the word is that Lonzo still hasn't started scrimmaging. Like Lonzo's still hurt. Discussion I've heard is that the bone bruise is what continues to bother him. And sometimes those things just don't heal for a long ass time. If Lonzo's out, that defense just isn't that good. Now, you have to factor in that their 24th performance last year was greatly impacted by not only Lonzo, but also Caruso's absence. Like the absence of both of those guys was huge. And the counter argument is that, yeah, the Bulls were good defensively early in the season, much like the Wolves were, and the Nuggets. And then the refs started calling games the way that they always called them, and they went back the other way. P.S. Just league, we like the game better the other way. Just stop calling. Like, please. We like the game so much better when these games don't take 7 hours and everyone's taking 500 free throws.
Please.
Come on. Do I think that the Bulls will be as good defensively as they were last year? Probably not. I don't think they'll be as bad as last year. The problem is, for my argument against you, would be that's exactly where you have them. Is 4 spots better than last year, still not a good defensive team. If you ask me to ballpark it, I would probably be a little bit higher on the defensive aptitude than you, probably 15th to 18th. And so that gets them square into an over 43.5 range. But without Lonzo, I can't get there. I cannot get there. A big question is whether or not Vucevic last year was a harbinger for years to come, or whether or not Nikola Vucevic had an outlier bad season. He was bad, and Bulls fans complained about him endlessly. But he was bad at things he's always been good at. Did Nikola Vucevic just lose the ability to hit bunnies?
Oh, yeah. That dude missed so many bunnies last year.
Is that likely to sustain? No, I'm asking.
I mean, it worries me that he's a 32-year-old big man who was not exactly athletic, but
yes,
like that seems like an athleticism thing where like I don't, you're not going to recover athleticism at age 32 as a 7 foot dude. So that to me makes me believe, well, like that may continue. It may not be as bad or continue terribly, but I'm not sure it's going to bounce back. Why should we believe it's going to get better?
Just because to me, it's not like if you believe it's an athleticism thing, that's sound. I don't. I think that's a skill and accuracy and variance thing. And I think,
I think it's all of that.
So to me, it's like I think Nikola Vucevic will make more short range shots that he has his entire career. I don't believe in but one of the big things here is I don't believe in sharp drop offs with good players. It's very rare that you see like he just can't do this anymore.
But even with NBA history telling us that big men in their 30s are the one place where that does tend to happen sometimes, that's my concern.
That drops off in other areas that Vuce is already bad at.
Yeah, that's fair.
It doesn't, you don't see somebody go from, yeah, he's got great touch around the rim to he can't make bunnies. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So like you're kind of attributing what happened last year as a signal of this other overall trend because it fit, like that's a little bit of narrative path fitting. But if you're just like, look, I don't think Nikola Vucevic is that good anyway. I think that he's 32. I think he's on the downhill. I think he's bad, period. I can't.
Well,
I'm willing to be like, I'm not so confident in Vucevic to bet the over, so I can't be that confident in it. I mean, that it matters.
Here's the upside of Vucevic, and you're gonna have to squint with me to call this upside. The Bulls don't have a draft pick this year because they traded it for Vucevic. So if you are borderline, like there's no tank happening here. No. Chicago certainly thinks they are good and will always try to win and push for the play-in. Like no matter who gets hurt, they are going to keep trying to win. Yep. And like this line is in that range where that does matter. We need a team that wants to try to push to win. To me, it's not just Vooch. We already know that Vooch as your anchor is not going to be a great defense. So that's part of it. Lonzo already being hurt matters. Zach Levine is coming off the most minutes of his career. That matters to me. Zach Levine has not been a healthy guy over his career. Yeah. So in all likelihood, I think they get less Zach this year. I think in all likelihood, they get worse DeMar DeRozan. He had a great career year, made a bunch of last second shots for winners. They're just a lot went right last year until it didn't. And then the injuries were bad, but a lot was going very well. Yes. And they had an expected wins of 40. They won 46, way over it because of all those late winners. But their numbers, this is kind of the inverse of the Cavs thing we just said. Yeah. But to me, I feel like they kind of got exposed as what they were, which is a 500-ish team. And the other East teams above them mostly all got better.
But the problem is the line accounts for that. The line is saying, like the bookmakers are saying, they're only they are 2.5 games over 500, and this number may get down further as the money comes in closer to the season. We may see 42s, 41.5s in the market. You're right though. I basically have it that Vooch had an outlier down year, but DeRozan had an outlier up year, and that's essentially a wash with a slight edge to the negative.
Yeah.
A big differential between you and I too is how good we think Billy Donovan is. I think Billy Donovan is like a top 10 coach. You are much more in the, where are you at with him in terms of, just give me like a general.
I haven't looked at it, probably around average, league average.
Maybe I think Billy Donovan is a top 10 coach. I think he's excellent. I think his ability to manage his personnel and financiers is very high. Guys buy in for him. He's one of those college coaches that did make the transition successfully. He brings a lot of experience with managing both star power. He has guys respect. He doesn't jerk guys around with their minutes. Donovan keeps teams. They don't lose. He doesn't lose the guys. And so I have a lot of confidence in Donovan as an addition here. Honestly, the biggest reason for me to go over, if I did, which I'm not, is the Pythagorean thing you said. Again, this is the weird trend that I found when I started looking at this data, which is teams, they are the second highest overperformer last year, which means that they won 5+ more games than they should have last season. I looked at the last 10 seasons at teams that had a Pythagorean wins mark of 5 or more over of what their actual was. I'm sorry, less. So they won more games than they should have. Their mark was their P wins was 5 or more less than their actual. 6, 2, and 1 to the over, which again says the books are looking at it and saying, oh, they should have won fewer games. We're going to downgrade them in the market. We're going to lower their rating based off of what they should have been. And I think it's less about that number being indicative and more of it impacting the market number, right? I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want it at 43.5. If this does get to 41.5, I'm going to take the over at 41.5.
Yeah. We'll never get that low in a big market too for Chicago. I don't think we're going to get to 41.5.
We've seen
already the number already is a little lower than I would have expected it to be. Because you're right, that the books are already counting for some of the things that we're trying to sharply credit in here. I would have thought certainly over 45 with a team that was pretty good last year and near the top of the standings for a lot of the time. So talk me through here. I like the under, but there's a 44.5 at your standard minus 110 or 43.5 at plus 130. My win range is 36 to 44 on them. If I'm playing the under, I feel like the smarter play, I'm getting 40 cents extra to just fade one win. I feel like I had to take the smaller number there at the better plus number. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think you got to take the plus 130 at PointsBet. Yeah. I think that if you're already under them, does a win matter? Yeah, it matters a ton. The 47.5s for Denver cashed over last year. The 48.5s cashed under. That's how important it can be. But you're getting this 40 cents on the dollar when your lower range outcomes fall below. I think there's also probably here, you have to account there should be in your thinking, not in your model, but in your thinking, there should be if things go badly, how far does the bottom drop out?
Yeah. And
to that end, I'll ask you, them to miss the playoffs is plus 165. Do you want to just go that route?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up to you as well. So I have Chicago right now. I have Chicago. Sorry, Bulls fans, cover your ears. I have Chicago in a tier with the New York Knickerbockers. Oof. Just those two as the 9 and 10 seeds. I have the Bulls squarely in the play-in. And if you don't think that that's fair, check the odds on the books for who's going to make the play-in. Mm-hmm. Chicago Bulls have the shortest odds of any team. They are the most likely play-in team according to the books. So if you're asking, do they miss the playoffs? To me, the real question you're asking is, this is the playoffs. Chicago has to win 1, maybe 2 play-in games. Do we like this team in a play-in setting to beat the Knicks or the Raptors or the Hawks or the Heat? Those are probably the teams we're looking at here. What do we think in a play-in 1-game playoff type setting? Do we like Chicago? I like the plus 165 because I put them squarely in the play-in and I can at least hedge out if I'm out of it. But what do you think in a must-win situation? Is this a team that you'd want your money on, or would you be happy to be fading?
All right, so let's just go through this. Celtics, Nets, Bucks, Sixers, Hawks, Heat, Cavs.
That's 7.
Let's put the Raptors.
Raptors are 8. That's where I have them. And then that's where I've got Knicks and Bulls are 9 and 10.
So I think you have to play the plus 165 and not do the win total under. And the reason I say that is like you're getting the extra 35 cents when we think that there are at least 8 teams that will be better, which means they would be a dog in the play-in tournament anyway. If you're wrong and there's one team that's worse than them out of those 8, they're a plus there, then the Bulls will be at home, likely favored, and you can hedge against that number if it looks bad at that point in the play-in. The only way you lose is if the Bulls are top 6, and I don't know how they're going to get to top 6.
Yeah, I don't see a great path. I don't think it's impossible, but I don't.
It's not impossible.
Yeah,
it's not impossible. Like we talked about how much you don't like the Heat, and you think the Heat could miss if the Heat fall into that range. If the Heat and the Raptors are both like a little bit worse.
But let's be clear though, Chicago is my 10 seed right now. Yeah. I didn't say it, but in my tier with the Knicks, they're second in the tier. Sorry, right. But to be the 10 seed to get top 6, you got to pass the 9, 8, and 7, and 6. You got to pass 4 other teams. So it's not just, oops, the Heat got hurt. We got to bottom out a bunch of these teams. So I think I just play both. I think you might be right that maybe the 165 is better. But a lot of times, if you have an angle you like as a better, you just got to find multiple plays to play it. And I think I feel strongly about this team as I have. They proved me wrong for a while last year and then kind of went to where I expected somewhat anyway. I was still wrong on them. This number is a lot higher, but I just feel fine fading this roster.